What do you imagine when you hear the words extremely intelligent person? Maybe you picture someone who always knows the answer. Someone who can solve complicated problems in seconds. Someone who walks into a room and immediately understands everything that's going on. But here's the interesting part. Being extremely intelligent doesn't always look the way we imagine. Sometimes it can look like asking too many questions. Sometimes it can look like getting bored very quickly. Sometimes it can look like overthinking something that seems incredibly simple. And sometimes it can even look like feeling completely out of place. So what actually happens inside the mind of someone with an extremely high IQ? And what makes the way they think different? Let's start with something surprisingly simple. 1. They don't like simple answers. Imagine someone asks you, "Why did this happen?" You give them an answer. For most people, that might be enough. But someone who naturally thinks very deeply might respond, "Okay, but why did that happen?" And then another question appears. And another. They don't necessarily want to argue. They just want to understand what is underneath the answer. It's like opening a box and discovering another box inside it. Then another one. And another. A simple question can suddenly become a much bigger conversation. And this can be useful. It can help someone notice problems that other people miss. It can help them understand complicated situations. But there's also a downside, because sometimes they don't know when to stop. A simple answer becomes 5 questions. 5 questions become a rabbit hole. And suddenly, they started wondering why people behave the way they do, which leads to psychology, which leads to history, which leads to some completely unrelated question. And 3 hours later, they're watching a video about something they weren't even thinking about that morning. Their curiosity keeps pulling them forward. And that brings us to another interesting trait. 2. They can get bored very easily. Think about learning something for the first time. At first, it's exciting. Everything is new. You're discovering how things work. You're making connections, but eventually you understand it. And then you're asked to do the same thing again, and again, and again. For someone who enjoys solving new problems, repetition can become extremely frustrating. It's not necessarily because they're lazy, it's because there isn't much left to figure out. Imagine watching the same movie every day after you've already memorized every scene. The first time might be interesting. The 10th time, not so much. This is one reason some highly intelligent people may enjoy challenges more than simple routines. They want something that makes them think, something unexpected, something they haven't figured out yet. And this can show up in everyday life. They may jump between hobbies. They may become obsessed with a subject for a while. They may spend weeks learning everything they can about something and then suddenly lose interest when it becomes too familiar. Their mind is already looking for the next puzzle. But there's another side to this. Because sometimes the search for something interesting never really stops. 3. They ask a lot of questions. There's a difference between wanting to know something and wanting to know why. Someone says that's just how it works, and the curious mind thinks, okay, but why? Someone says, everyone does it this way. The response is, why does everyone do it this way? Someone says that's impossible. And suddenly the question becomes, why is it impossible? This kind of curiosity can be incredibly powerful. Because instead of simply accepting information, they may want to understand it for themselves. and that can lead them into subjects they never expected to learn about. They might start with one question and end up learning about 10 completely different things. You could give them a simple answer, but if they're genuinely interested, that answer might only create another question, and another, and another. This is where curiosity becomes almost like a fuel. The more they learn, the more interesting things become, because every answer reveals something else they didn't know. And that leads to one of the most interesting parts of this whole topic. 4. They notice connections. Imagine 5 different things happening. A person says something. Then someone behaves differently. Then another problem appears. Then something similar happens again. Most people might see 5 separate events, but someone who naturally looks for patterns might think, wait, are these connected? They start comparing things. They notice similarities. They remember something that happened months ago. They connect it to something happening right now, and suddenly something that looked random starts to make sense. It's almost like putting puzzle pieces on a table. One piece doesn't tell you much. 2 pieces don't tell you much. But once you put enough pieces together, you suddenly see the picture. This ability to connect ideas can be extremely useful. It's useful when solving problems. It's useful when learning. It's useful when trying to understand people. But once again, there is a downside, because the same brain that can connect many things can also connect too many things. And that's where overthinking enters the picture. 5. They can overthink simple things. Here's something almost everyone can relate to. You send someone a message. They don't respond. A normal thought might be, they're probably busy. Done, but an overthinking mind might go somewhere else. Did I say something wrong? Did that message sound weird? Maybe I should have worded it differently. Why haven't they responded? Should I send another message? Wait, maybe I shouldn't. And now you've spent 20 minutes analyzing a message that took 10 seconds to write. This is the strange part. A mind that's good at analyzing complicated problems doesn't always know when to stop analyzing simple ones. It keeps searching for possibilities. What could happen? What might happen? What if this happens? What if I'm wrong? What if I missed something? And eventually, a simple decision can feel like a major problem. This is why intelligence shouldn't be confused with always making perfect decisions. Being able to think deeply doesn't mean you always know when not to think deeply. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stop thinking and just make the decision. 6. They may question things other people accept. Imagine someone says that's just how things are. For some people, that's the end of the conversation. For a naturally questioning mind, it's the beginning. Why? Why do we do things this way? Why is this rule here? Who decided this? Does it actually make sense? Could there be a better way? This doesn't necessarily mean they're rebellious. They may not even disagree with the rule. They simply want to understand the reason behind, and that's an important difference. Questioning something doesn't automatically mean rejecting it. Sometimes, you understand something better after asking questions about it. And this way of thinking can be useful. It can help people challenge bad ideas. It can help them find better solutions. It can help them avoid blindly following something just because everyone else does it. But there's a social problem that can come with this. Not everyone wants to question everything. And that can create misunderstandings. 7. They can feel misunderstood. Imagine having an idea in your head that makes perfect sense to you. You can see the whole thing, the connections, the reasons, the conclusion. Then you try to explain it, and the other person just looks at you and says, "Wait, what?" You try again. You explain one part, then another. But somehow, the idea that seemed so clear in your head becomes difficult to communicate. This can happen to anyone. But when someone spends a lot of time thinking deeply about unusual ideas or complicated subjects, they may sometimes struggle to find people who want to have the same kind of conversations. They might want to talk about ideas. Other people might want to talk about sports. They might want to discuss a strange question about the universe. Someone else might just want to talk about what they had for lunch. Neither person is wrong. They're simply interested in different things. And this can create a strange feeling. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like nobody really understands how your mind works. But there's another side to this. Sometimes highly intelligent people don't just struggle to find people who understand them. They struggle to understand themselves. Because the more they learn, the more they realize how much they don't know. 8. The more they know, the more questions they see. Imagine knowing almost nothing about a subject. It seems simple. You think you understand it. Then you start learning. You discover one thing, then another, and suddenly the subject becomes much bigger than you originally imagined. It's like looking at the ocean from the beach. From far away it looks simple, just water. But once you start exploring it, you discover an enormous world underneath the surface. This can happen with knowledge too. The more someone learns, the more they discover how much there is left to learn. And that's why genuine intelligence doesn't always look like someone saying, "I know everything." Sometimes it looks more like, "I might be wrong," or "I hadn't thought about it that way," or "I don't know." That last one is especially important. Because being comfortable saying "I don't know" can be a sign of confidence. You don't need to pretend you have every answer. You can simply admit that you don't know, and then go find out. But all of this raises an important question. If having an extremely high IQ can come with curiosity, deep thinking, and problem-solving ability, does that automatically make someone's life better? Not necessarily. 9. Intelligence has a dark side. Being intelligent doesn't automatically make someone happy. It doesn't automatically make them disciplined. It doesn't automatically make them successful. And it certainly doesn't protect them from making bad decisions. In fact, some of the same traits that can be useful can become problems when taken too far. Curiosity can become endless distraction. Deep thinking can become overthinking. High standards can become perfectionism. Independence can become isolation. Questioning everything can make it difficult to simply accept things and move on. And constantly searching for the best answer can make it difficult to make any decision. This is an important point, because intelligence is not a magic superpower. It's simply one part of a person. And having a powerful mind doesn't automatically teach you how to use it well. 10. IQ doesn't tell you everything. This might be the most important part of the entire video. A high IQ does not automatically mean someone is wise. It doesn't automatically mean they're emotionally intelligent. It doesn't automatically mean they're creative. It doesn't automatically mean they'll be successful. And it definitely doesn't mean they'll always make good choices. You can be extremely good at solving problems and still create problems in your own life. You can understand complicated ideas and still struggle with simple emotions. You can know exactly what you should do and still not do it. Because being smart and being wise are not the same thing. Knowing the answer is one thing. Knowing what to do with the answer is something else. 11. So what is actually different? So, what makes the psychology of extremely intelligent people interesting? Maybe it's not that they always know more. Maybe it's that they often want to understand more. They question, they explore, they connect ideas, they look for patterns, they notice problems, they ask why, and sometimes they think far more than they need to. That's the paradox. The same mind that can make complicated things easier to understand can sometimes make simple things much harder. The same curiosity that helps someone learn can also make it difficult to stop searching. The same independence that helps someone think for themselves can sometimes make them feel alone. And maybe that's why intelligence is much more complicated than simply putting a number next to someone's name. Ending so, if you recognized yourself in some of these traits, don't immediately think, maybe I'm a genius. That's not the point. And you don't need an IQ score to make this interesting. Maybe the more useful question is, what do you do with the way your mind works? If you're naturally curious, use that curiosity. If you question things, use it to find better answers. If you overthink, learn when to step back. If you love learning, keep learning. Because having a powerful mind isn't really about having all the answers. It's about knowing how to use the mind you have. And maybe the most interesting thing about an extremely intelligent person isn't how many answers they know. It's how many questions they're still willing to ask.